What happens to your mind when the world goes completely silent? Not just quiet, not just peaceful, but absolutely, utterly, completely silent for 48 straight hours. Welcome back to Human versus Silence, where we push the boundaries of human psychology and discover what really happens when we strip away every sound, every distraction, and every noise that's been filling our lives since the moment we were born. Most of us have never experienced true silence. We wake up to alarms. We drive with music. We work in offices with background chatter. We fall asleep to podcasts or television. Our brains have become so dependent on constant audio stimulation that silence has become almost foreign. But what if I told you that 2 days without a single sound could completely rewire how you think, feel, and perceive reality? That's exactly what we're about to explore. I spent 48 hours in complete silence, and what happened to my mind was nothing like I expected. This isn't just another challenge video. This is a deep dive into what neuroscience tells us about sensory deprivation, psychological breakdown, and the incredible resilience of the human mind. Stick around, because the results might genuinely change how you think about silence forever. Let's start with the science. Your brain is essentially an information processing machine. Every single second, it's receiving millions of data points through your senses. Sound is one of the most dominant inputs. Your auditory cortex is constantly working, filtering noise, recognizing patterns, and alerting you to potential danger. When you remove that input completely, something fascinating happens. Your brain doesn't just accept the silence. It starts to rebel. Hour 1 felt almost peaceful. I'd prepared a soundproof room, turned off my phone, and committed to absolute silence. No music, no talking, no background noise. Nothing. The first few hours were actually pleasant. It felt like meditation. My mind was calm. I was thinking clearly. I actually felt relaxed. This is the part where most people think silence is healing, and honestly it is. But what happens next is where it gets interesting. By hour 6, something shifted. I started noticing sounds that weren't there. My ears were straining to find input. I could hear my own heartbeat, the blood rushing through my veins. My breathing became impossibly loud. This is called tinnitus in extreme cases, but what I was experiencing was my brain's desperate attempt to fill the void. When external sound disappears, your brain amplifies internal sounds. It's like your auditory system is screaming, "I need input. Give me something. Anything." Hour 12 hit like a wall. This is when the psychological effects started becoming real. Isolation combined with silence creates a unique kind of disorientation. I found myself having full conversations in my head. Not just thinking, but actually hearing my own voice as if someone else was speaking. My internal monologue became so vivid that it felt external. I was having arguments with myself, making jokes to an invisible audience. My brain was so desperate for social interaction and auditory stimulation that it was literally creating it. Here's what's happening neurologically. Your brain relies on sensory input to maintain what's called temporal awareness. Sound helps anchor you in time. It helps you understand causation and sequence. Without it, your sense of time becomes distorted. Hours felt like minutes. Minutes felt like hours. I'd look at my watch, thinking only 30 minutes had passed, and 3 hours had gone by. Or I'd feel like I'd been sitting for an eternity, and it had only been 15 minutes. This temporal disorientation is one of the first signs of sensory deprivation affecting your psychology. By day 2, something unexpected happened. I stopped fighting the silence. The resistance faded. Instead of my brain trying to fill the void with sounds, it started doing something completely different. It started creating vivid visual hallucinations, not scary or disturbing, just visual noise, patterns, colors, shapes moving across my vision, even though my eyes were open. This is what happens when your brain has no external stimuli to process. It turns inward and starts generating its own content. The loneliness was different than I expected. It wasn't sad or depressing. It was more like existing in a void. You know how you feel connected to the world through sound, through hearing other people, music, nature, traffic, anything. Remove that completely, and you feel utterly disconnected. You're cut off, isolated, not just physically, but neurologically. Your brain's social circuits start misfiring because they're not receiving the audio cues that normally trigger connection and belonging. Around hour 36, I experienced what I can only describe as a breakthrough moment. My mind finally stopped fighting the silence. It accepted it. And in that acceptance, something strange happened. I felt this incredible sense of clarity, not because the silence was peaceful, but because my mind had exhausted its resistance. It was like my thoughts became crystalline. I could think about complex problems with a focus I rarely experience in normal life. Ideas connected in ways they normally don't. Without the constant audio input, my mind had freed up processing power for deeper thinking. But here's the dark side that nobody talks about. As hour 40 approached, I felt the early stages of what could become a genuine psychological crisis. My sense of self was starting to feel unstable. Without external feedback, without hearing my own voice, without any auditory confirmation that I exist in relation to the world, your identity becomes fragile. You start questioning whether you're real, whether anything is real. I wasn't panicking, but I could feel the edge of something dangerous approaching. This is where extended sensory deprivation becomes genuinely concerning. The final hours were the hardest, not because I was uncomfortable, but because I was approaching the limit of what my psychology could handle. I understood why solitary confinement is considered torture. It's not the physical discomfort. It's what it does to your mind when you remove all external input and all connection to the outside world. Your brain starts turning on itself. It becomes unstable. Creative but unstable. When I finally heard sound again, when that first noise broke through, it was overwhelming. My ears felt sensitive. My sense of time snapped back into place. But something had shifted in my understanding. I realized how dependent we are on sensory input for our psychological stability. How much we need connection, sound, and external stimulation to feel grounded in reality. Here's what this experience taught me. Silence isn't always healing. Sometimes it's confronting. Sometimes it's destabilizing. But it's also revealing. It shows you how fragile your sense of reality actually is. How much you depend on the world around you to feel like yourself. And maybe most importantly, it shows you that your mind is far more powerful and far more vulnerable than you ever realized. If you want to explore the limits of human psychology like this, if you want to understand what really happens when we push ourselves to the edge, subscribe, because we're doing more experiments that will blow your mind. And let me know in the comments. Would you ever try this? How long do you think you could actually last?